how do you think to do the live art in China?
Mm.
And because for me, I feel that I don't know, it's just my personal feeling. A lot of performance art or live art combined with here UK's live art. In that environment, I feel most performance art or live art for me is more radical than here. Maybe because the environment is really different. Atmosphere also is so different. Here is more open, feel anything is possible. But in that place, feel something is uncanny. I don't know how to say it in a right word, but yeah, that's my feeling. So I also want to ask you this.
It's interesting because when just about anything is possible, to be radical is kind of difficult because you're allowed, off you go, do it. And so when I was, making live art in London, I often had the feeling that whatever the artists were doing, there were people doing kind of similar stuff, but more crazy out in some kind of clubs and kind of places for fun. So I felt that the artists were kind of often borrowing the radicalism of the genuine society in order to kind of make their own art kind of maybe that's a bit unfair. Sometimes they were kind of sympathetic and kind of close to these communities, but I felt it's difficult to be radical in the UK when almost everything is, you can say and do almost anything. That doesn't mean that the society doesn't have rules. It doesn't have problems. And it doesn't have things you would like and wish to change, of course. It has those. But you can say what you want.
Mm.
So it's kind of frustrating in a way. You can say what you want as long as it doesn't matter and no one's listening. The only time it becomes a problem is if too many people listen to you. And then you kind of find that there's ways you get shut down.
Mm.
In China, it's a very different situation, both for what you can say and for what artists do and what the language of the art is. So I feel that, when we're doing these performances in China, the performances themselves are often not terribly radical, not, really crazy far out, but they're much more likely to provoke a reaction and to kind of test the boundaries of what the society is willing to accept. Often even the kind of very safe-seeming performances could kind of provoke a kind of quite a reaction against them. So it's interesting that in many ways, I think it's a lot easier to be radical in China simply because of the society itself being so much more straitjacketed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And when I combine my experience in China, when I joined our events, and we find different places to do our performance art events and invited different people to join us. I felt I was more crazy in China when I when I attended and thought how to do our events in that country. But in here, I feel I'm more in a safety environment. And although I also try to join different performance art or live art events, or went to some galleries, went to some museums, went to some clubs, went to some underground places to see what they were doing. I still feel that, oh, I missed our ways. I missed our last minute live art ways to go to a random place and see the possibility. And also, I still remember one time that we wanted to do an event about danger topic, and the two guys and I, guys and I just had a random travel, like a travel in Nanjing, went to a lot of destroyed places, this a horrible building. I feel it's more make me more excited and gave me more inspirations about. I don't know how to say that specifically, but here I feel sometimes maybe relate with my education, more things about how to show it rather than, I don't know, in a good environment, how to show it, have the good light, have the good audio, have the good projections, technologies. Yeah, that's something gave me this kind of feeling.
Well, I mean, part of that is because you are kind of studying on a course. So in London, well, you were studying on a course in an MA in Nanjing too, but I suppose the course you were studying didn't really touch this kind of stuff very much, so it wasn't really relevant. But I do kind of get what you say, because I think in London, what you have is a system. And so you can actually make a living and be recognized in this kind of official system for doing live art and performances. So that there is some kind of normal career ladder and kind of standards, and you can get kind of kind of marks and kind of awards and graduate and all this type of thing. In China, it's just kind of outside the system. So, I mean, I'm not allowed to teach performance in the university. I sometimes kind of teach it secretly, bury it inside some other courses that I teach, but I'm not allowed to actually teach performance art. That's the reality. It's kind of outlawed as a medium. Whereas in UK, you can kind of do BA, MA, PhD in it, no problem. And I think as a result of that, because it is part of the system, it inevitably has these kind of takes these kind of society rules with it far more. Whereas in China, I think people come to it as a space to kind of push away those rules, at least for a little bit of time, to kind of feel, what do I actually think? What do I actually feel?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Your words make me to thinking, although I studied performance making, have the close relationship with theater, in our class, we still talk a lot about performance art, live art, and also we have the class to analyze what is radical performance. However, during our classes or projects, so maybe few people would like to do radical performance. That's something for me is so interesting. We continuously to talk about the experiment performance, radical scenes, and analyze some performance artists, but just few of them wanted to achieve what is radical performance. Sometimes I feel in this class, in this journey in UK, study journey in UK, it taught me a lot how to use good technologies and how to create a beautiful images. Sometimes I feel a little bit tired of kept thinking about how to create a beautiful image. So
you already made some beautiful images. Even in one of the first events we did, the the first kind of more wild event we did in Nanjing in the park, the Longxia Festival.
Oh yeah.
The performance you made, kind of going into the lake itself, it's kind of beautiful
Mm.
and unexpected, and it had this sort of submerged in the water of the lake, a lake you're not allowed to swim in. Nobody goes into that lake, so it was kind of nice to see you kind of underwater in the lake like that, and it was a beautiful image. Now, could it have been filmed more poetically? Yes, but I think the fact that it was a bit rough, it's sort of just like this moment which was caught, that gives it also a certain power as well. So, but I agree, there's this more controlling thing, every element, and rather than this kind of spontaneous rough beauty, the British way is a more kind of considered and controlled aesthetic.
Yeah, but it's also a good thing. It's also a good thing to make me think a lot. And also for example, in my financial performance, that some students really, my members, cooperators really wanted to do a performance about radical performance. But finally, we did a performance related with our parents.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's really interesting for me. In the beginning, everyone think a lot how to let it be radical, crazy, but but in the process, I don't know what happened. Maybe I know, just I forgot and too inside in the process. We let the performance is more safety. I don't know the ways to perform. And also we have a piece that we, four of us eat together, had a dinner part. And that part make me to think of our dinner performance in Nanjing Art College. Yes. It's in our financial performance, we just eating and talk about our thinking of silence in the dinner table. And actually, at the same time, whenever I did this performance, I think a lot of our dinner performance. It's so crazy. Have the sorry, fox eggs and have the food in my face, in my hair. But now I just sit here.
I mean, I remember after, the performance, of the kind of having the food stuffed in your face by a kind of passive aggressive, increasingly openly aggressive waiter, until finally it's really just splatterfest. And all the time you're just, sitting there taking it. When it comes to the acts, it was really interesting because the audience there, I don't think they'd ever seen anything like that. And they were kind of at first bored because it unfolded in real time. And I had some people coming up to me asking to talk to me, but it started, and I said, look over there, the performance. There's nothing happening, and then slowly it kind of built, and to the point at the end, when the acts came, people were just like horrified and sort of filming it compulsively, and they wanted to leave, but they couldn't leave because there was no space to get out properly. So there was this kind of splatter, and I think what struck me after you finished, the three of you, the three performers, the audience wouldn't let you leave. When you came back to take the applause, they demanded to know what the performance was, how you were feeling, what was it, they couldn't accept that this was just a kind of normal performance. It was what the hell is this? Come on, explain. You can't do this without an explanation. I don't think I've ever had that experience in London where you do a performance and people won't let you go until you explain yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I can get this kind of feeling, and I still remember after our dinner performance in Nanjing, one guy kept asking me, not asking me, told me, you know, this is our life, real life. It's really strong because his emotion was really strong, too strong. You know, this is our life, this is our real life. And his gesture like that, I feel, oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I really think people do kind of have a lot of tension, a lot of stuff kind of bottled up inside, and so many people are not allowed to really express their feelings. You know, if they did, it would be kind of crazy mayhem. So yeah, I think this performance did sort of show some of that.
Yeah. But when I talk about radical performance with my classmates, one of my classmates, she said that when I talk these things to her, she said she for her, just for her, she doesn't like the some performances kept to challenging people's view, like to
Mm-hmm.
to hurt themselves, or to just be crazy. But why you are so crazy? And kept to let your physical body to be tired, exhausted. And he said, why do something like that? You can have a lot of ways. So that's also make me to think about the radical performance, what it is. Yeah.
I mean, my feeling is that with that dinner performance, what was radical was that there's this almost obligation for harmony in China. Herxie, you know, is this whole principle of basically accept, you know, whatever your leaders, your parents tell you, and don't complain. And so the kind of the performance kind of staged that process kind of as an extreme. But you might notice nobody got hurt. Nobody, you know, you just had to take a shower and clean yourself, and then you're fine. So it wasn't a performance which was a particularly painful performance. It was just more kind of humiliating and kind of crazy. So I think there is, for a while at least, a kind of flirtation in Britain. And I know actually you also see it here in China, between kind of S&M and performance. The idea that pain is a way of showing deeper emotions, deeper feelings. And I think a certain amount of difficulty, physical pain and hardship, does indeed kind of produce something. But I think it's, you know, there's one thing for what you get as a performer, and there's another thing for kind of showing that within a mainstream audience to get a kind of attention and spectacle. I think as a tool to sort of give you yourself something, difficulty, endurance, tiredness, pain, all of these can be useful strategies. I wouldn't abuse them, but they, you know, I wouldn't kind of say they have no place. But the kind of fetishization of pain is also something which, for a while at least, when I was in UK, was kind of popular. I'm not sure if that's still kind of to the same degree, but that kind of equaled radical, because it was kind of a value which went against the kind of mainstream value of you know, you shouldn't hurt yourself. So yeah, there's many kind of values which you can break, but does that mean that the performance is any good? when I see so much kind of real pain within the society, I kind of I had to ask myself, is pain really a kind of a primary medium I want to use? And I kind of, you know, avoid it in its gratuitous way, but I'm not saying all pain is necessarily bad. I think that goes too far in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still thinking of that, because when my classmates talking that with me, that also make me to think of myself, because I feel in my personal performance, my ways was also a little bit painful. It's not it's not peaceful, or just I don't know how to say that specifically, but I can feel my ways is also a painful ways. Maybe so I'm also seeing why I use this way. Sometimes when I joined our events in China, I just spontaneously thought that I wanted to do that. I didn't think too much why I wanted to do that in this kind of feeling or ways. Just I wanted to do that. But here, when I talk with my tutors or classmates or other artists, I find that I think more ways. I don't know how to say that. Yeah, and also, uh, oh yeah, sorry, I I don't know how
I
to.
mean, my sense of that is that quite a number of the performances both you made for Last Minute Live Art and of the ones other artists kind of created, there was an element of pain, but maybe the kind of stronger element was of self-humiliation, of making yourself kind of in a very kind of terrible situation. So starting with kind of going through the rubbish bins and kind of covering yourself in rubbish, like this. It's kind of, it's not really painful in terms of ow, like this, but it is something which kind of, in terms of your social status, takes you kind of right down to the kind of to the very bottom. And I saw quite a few people were making, that was a kind of a aesthetic quite a few people used in their performances, much more than kind of physical pain, I would say. And another difference, which is an interesting one, I think, from following what you're saying, is the work you're doing now that you're in London is much more considered academically. So there is a kind of thinking through of the meaning of what you're doing in advance of doing it. Yeah. Whereas in China, it was working through a more intuitive process. And I think both, are okay. But personally, I think if everything is too considered, then it takes away some of the strength of the work, and it's necessary to. There is a time for learning, and considering talking about what you're doing is necessary. I did a PhD, so I'm not going to say it has no value, but I think it's a problem when you have to kind of spend too long thinking about an art performance in advance, justifying it to an awful lot of people in order to try to get either money to do it, permission to do it. You basically have gone through the whole thing and intellectualized it, and then you can't really just do it in quite the same way. And I think one of the differences with the kind of events we were doing in China is that they happened a lot more quickly, and there was not this kind of time and space for kind of intellectualizing it in advance. Yes, we would often talk about the performances afterwards, but the performance actually had its own life first before we tended to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yes. So when mentioned about academic ways and in like to think in relate to with our education, because you create our last minute live art, how to say viewer account
Mm-hmm.
in WeChat, and whenever I supported the one video, my parents can see that I click the like, and
Yeah, like.
it's yeah, my parent, and I really like my parents' questions and thinking to me about your performance. One performance that they mentioned a lot is dinner.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't talk too much about my part. They still try to ignore that I did something is not. They still not. They still didn't want to accept that. They talk about you. They said, "Wow, Bill, your teacher in China did something so crazy." But I can feel why he was so crazy. I knew my mother and my father talk something like that. I asked them why you can feel. They said because this is our society. We live in this kind of society. So I knew why he did something like that. Also your videos and tragedy opera, that's
Mm-hmm.
the red pin in your body. My mother sent message to me. Wow, I was so hurt when I saw this video. I feel that your Bill's body there was something make me feel sad, so disappointed, frustrated, and although he fall down a lot of times, he continues to stand. And my mother said, "Hey, kids, this is our our environment. How can we do? How should we do for this kind of environment?"
What else? You have to keep trying. Yeah, it's interesting to get the point of view of the sort of normal people. And actually, your parents are people with, and they're not entirely normal. They have you know a cultural background as well. So even if they're not living in a kind of big cultural center. Yeah, it is interesting. Because it's become much more difficult in the last couple of years to make live events due to the pandemic and general kind of crackdown on, how should I say, performance, live art, anything kind of which looks like it might be off message. Because of that, been making more videos, and particularly the last sort of 6 months, year, been trying more to kind of use video as a medium to get these pieces out, and it is interesting that it reaches a kind of larger audience that way. I mean, the really crazy one was the bubble performance, which looks like nothing. It looks like a joke in a way, but because it was a kind of inside this big inflatable bubble, but queuing in the virus queue, and it's someone takes a kind of a short video, and they make a kind of little comment. It suddenly kind of reaches social media, and 7 million people watch it. It's crazy. that you can do something kind of simple but reach such, and I almost lost my job over it. They got so crazy over something so kind of on the face of it, unradical. But that was a kind of like a huge challenge for what they were willing to accept. That you cannot, and the question I asked so many times is, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? People are so obsessed with this question of what does something mean. It was really crazy that a really kind of simple, and actually it has had a consequence. Although I finally didn't get fired for it, I have now kind of basically not been kind of allowed to continue with the job and teach kind of students. I've been kind of isolated and kind of pushed into a kind of hobby courses. So they kind of know that that I'm somebody who students who can pollute students with performance ideas. So they kind of keep me on the side. I figure if they can't even take a kind of a simple kind of light piece like that, then maybe it's better to not be kind of too close to them. But it is funny what counts as radical in which context.
Yes.
When the public system here in China is so completely controlled, and so only one message, the government message is the only, and it's their job to kind of promote the government message. So it's become kind of impossible to do anything artistic, basically, within the official system. It's been taken over, and basically the only art is propaganda art within that sphere.
Oh yeah, it's make me think a lot. Yeah.
When it's as bad as that, really kind of minor things can kind of provoke a reaction. I don't think people quite appreciate just how controlled the arts are in China outside. It's like kind of really kind of very quickly kind of narrowing down what's possible. Even when we started Last Minute Live Art, it was a much more open atmosphere than it is now.
So you mean now the situation was now?
I mean, this year there are no performance art festivals, more or less. Maybe someone will try to kind of make something happen, but more or less, there only kind of things happen in somebody's hometown with the other artists in that town. There's no kind of even national, let alone international festivals. So we're really kind of the independent sphere is suffering really badly at the moment.
Wow. I'm thinking of that because although I just left our China half year, I didn't that happen such a lot of things and now it looks like that. Yeah.
All the kind of universities now, their kind of theatre courses, they all the universities have to kind of do these kind of read history plays now, and across the whole country they all have to kind of produce history of Communist Party and kind of do this kind of patriotic read history work. That's become obligatory across the whole country. So you can understand how doing live art This is a funny thing. There's a bar here with a called Pink Banana, funnily enough, and it's run by a Canadian guy here in Sherman. He's an artist and musician, and he was, we were talking about, and he was sort of saying, that, the kind of stuff I'm doing, there were people doing it when he first came to China, and actually he was in Nanjing. He met Nick actually quite a long time ago. But to be doing it in 2022, he's like, that's far out. That's crazy. You're still doing this. That's really crazy shit. But because that is totally not the atmosphere now. People. It's really kind of become kind of police state stuff for some people.
But although in this kind of atmosphere situation, you still continue to do the performance art in Xiamen.
Well, in some ways, it's more inspiring. It's more inspiring to be in that situation, but you also have to be a bit careful. And I think the way we worked before, we were a bit more open, and we didn't try to hide too much. We tried to kind of be friendly and explain, and then only if we were doing something naughty, and we knew it, we tried to kind of like check there's no one around, do it, and then move on. But and I think we were kind of good at kind of knowing how far we could go. Here now, you have to be much more careful. But I'm getting a feeling that I won't be in China forever, and so I'm just going to kind of continue to push what can be done. I won't share all of the videos of everything I do online. Some stuff has to be done only for the European or outside of China audience. Some things I can't even share for that audience because they'll get me into too much trouble, that I'll just be kicked out of the country.
I still remember you talk about that you will not stay in China.
Well, it might be my fate to kind of be here for longer. Who knows? But I don't want to kind of. I think thinking that you might be leaving in the next 6 months is a bit liberating. It kind of lets you sort of. I don't like to be thinking, oh, I shouldn't do this because of that. That will get me into trouble. I rather think, okay, this is what I'm going to do. How can I get away with it?
Yeah, it's so interesting because for me, I feel that here is not my place currently.
Yes.
It's also a way that makes me to think I want to do it just following my ways. In here, maybe just currently, I don't know, in the future, I feel I lost my ways. I lost my voice in this place.
Yeah, it can be like that, but I wouldn't worry. That you had a voice before you entered the system, so once you're out of that system, you can take what's useful from it, and your own voice is there. I think what's more a danger is if people get educated too strongly before they get their own voice, or if the education they get doesn't really encourage their own voice.
Yeah, because during our classes, projects, when I talk with some students, especially some students come from German. Yeah, they also, I feel it's so interesting that we have the same feeling. I come from China, we come from German, that in the UK, that is not, although we emphasize you can do whatever you want to, the truth is not the truth. I don't know how to describe this kind of situation. It's not that totally like you can do whatever you want to do. A lot of things relate with money, and I don't know how to say it. And about not a lot of places are so open to what to okay, you can do it, that you what you want to do give you these kind of opportunities. Also, when you apply some projects, you need to consider a lot about the not politics, academic way,
Mhm.
even though there are some organizations outside of universities. I don't know whether you can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, there's a whole sort of system in place to kind of assess what you do and it, make it fit in with. There's a lot of systems actually. There's a kind of a lot of different kind of groups, venues, and communities, and it might just be a matter that you've not found the one which fits you best yet. But that doesn't change the fact that most of them have this kind of tendency to try. They want you to justify everything you're doing in advance, and in language which is either academic language or some kind of social project or economic or whatever. So yeah, it looks a lot more free than it actually is. One of the things, for example, I had this feeling when I left the UK and came to China is I started doing my shows again in China with absolutely no expectation that anybody would fund them. You know, there was nobody I could apply to, ask permission from. I just had to kind of do what I felt like, and then try and find a venue that could accommodate it, probably for free. And in some ways, the situation is much worse because there's no infrastructure really to support what I was doing. But in doing that, I realized I had been carrying some of the British attitudes with me. And there were certain things I was not doing because I didn't want to piss these people off too much by making a performance about this or about that. And I was always somebody who kind of pissed people off. But I realized that even I kind of had a little bit of this kind of British police inside of my head, of what you can and cannot do, what is not going to be useful for your career to do, etc. So it was kind of liberating to be working in China, where there was no point having this kind of British system of values any longer. And so I might as well just follow what I really want to do myself. And I think I had to kind of get outside of Britain to have enough distance from all of those structures which you're talking about in order to have that freedom to kind of reconnect with myself.
Yeah, and also I also when I studied and did performances in UK, I got a kind of feeling that you did performances. How about you did performance in China? How about people to look at you, think about your identity, your face, yeah, because you come from the Western, and your shape, your like me, when I was when I'm here, people know that I come from Asia countries. And yeah, sometimes sometimes when we started to talking about something, sometimes I feel a little bit, just a little bit tired and uncomfortable that they kept asking me about our country's politics.
Mm-hmm.
So that also sometimes, to some extent, influence what I'm doing. I will be a little bit cautious or a little bit worried that I don't want to people here think too much about my culture. Not my culture, my country's
Mm.
politics. You can think about my culture because I can't change my culture. I in my body have already so many cultures. I can't let this culture go, let this culture go. It has already influenced me. But I don't like you kept up. Some people kept asking me, oh, when you were in China, whether you can do that. I think there are so many news to to tell you your country so have the so strict rules, regulations for you. You can't do this, it will be dangerous, blah blah blah, like that. Sometimes I
Yeah.
said, but in China, I have an art group. I have an art group. We did a lot of crazy things.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff we did is, as crazy as stuff you'd find in London. Um, I think there is a bit of a difference in some ways, in that UK in particularly London in particular is a multicultural city.
Mm,
So you as being kind of Chinese in London, you are not automatically kind of outside of the mainstream of the society. Um, it's and you when people look at you, you could be British Chinese, for all they know. So the identity of what is British does include Chinese. Whereas I think for me in China, it's a much more monocultural country in which, or at least officially, it seems to be. And so I'm clearly a kind of a foreign visitor who is outside of the culture there. But yeah, it gets kind of tedious to always be correcting people about politics, and it's certainly a much more diverse situation in the reality here.
mm,
That it's not everybody is kind of suffering in prison camps, and millions of soldiers everywhere, and all the kind of terrible stories which people read about in the Western media. Which is not to say that all the things which I said earlier about kind of censorship aren't also true. Those are true, and a whole lot of other things are true as well, such as kind of crazy performance art things can happen, and do happen. So it's a big enough country and enough people that there are interesting things and diverse things, and people don't have the feeling. I get the impression that they're living in some kind of hell or anything like that. No,